Hi students, today our topic of discussion is nothing but active and passive voice. Active and passive voice. Why do we need this active and passive voice when one is enough? Quite often you might have asked this question. Either we need active voice or we need only passive voice. Why do we need both? When if we think that both of them express the same idea, look at the screen. Observe these sentences. They played football. We are learning English. India defeated Pakistan. In these sentences, we stress on the fact that the doer of the action is something important. In the first sentence, what we want to say is that they played football. Who played? They played. Now in the second sentence, in fact, we could say, we are learning English. It is we who are learning English. Not he, not she. And in the last sentence, India defeated Pakistan. Not any other country, our motherland. And in these sentences, we gave a sort of significance, importance to the people who did the action, the subject of the verb, the subject of the sentence. Look at these sentences now. My pen is found missing. The case has been investigated well. Africa was known as the Dark Continent. Now when we say my pen is found missing, who did that act? We have no idea at all. Now the case has been investigated well. Who investigated the case? It's not mentioned at all. Now Africa was known as the Dark Continent. Who knew about Africa at that time as a Dark Continent? We don't know. So in the last three sentences, it is evident that the doer of the action is either unknown or remain insignificant. And this is why we need two types of sentences. Let's go further. Look at the most famous statement in any Indian languages, especially when we deal with the grammar. What could be it? What could be it? You can remember that, I think. Ram killed Ravan. And this is one classic sentence which is taken for teaching active voice and passive voice in all the Indian languages, be it Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Telugu, Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi. This sentence is the key sentence for teaching active voice and passive voice. Let me take that same sentence here too. Ram killed Ravan. Imagine that you were in Ayodhya. During the Treta Yuga, when Ram was the beloved king of the people of Ayodhya. And one day you came to know, you heard on those days when there was no internet, no TV, no mobile, no newspaper, you heard someone speaking about Ram killing Ravan. You could just go to your neighbor and say, see, Ram killed Ravan. You don't mind whether it was Ravan or Meghnad or someone else. What you want to say that your beloved king or our beloved king Ram killed that Ravan, whoever it may be. We give so much importance to the person who did the act of killing. Now imagine that you were in Lanka where you were a Rakshasa already more. And you too came to know about the news of Ravan's death. And you are now, imagine you are now a subject of Lord Ravan in Lanka. And you too came to know about the death. What could be your reaction to it? How could you tell your neighbor about the death of Ravan? You may be beating on your chest, crying, and then you could tell your neighbor, see, Ravan was killed by Ram. What concerns you is the death of Ravan. Whether he was killed by Ram or Lakshman or Hanuman, that doesn't matter at all. What you want to say, what you want to express is that your beloved king Ravan is no more. Therefore you say Ravan was killed by Ram. Sometimes you may not mention even the name of Ravan. Name of Ram there, because for you Ram is not a matter of significance, because you are a subject of Ravan. And this is the reason why we need two types of sentences. So active voice sentence signifies the importance of the person who did the act, the subject of the sentence, the doer of the action, while the passive voice signifies or gives importance to the person who underwent the action, who tends to be the object of the action, not the doer of the action. And that is why we have two types of voices, active as well as passive. Sometimes I feel that in Indian languages, why do we talk about Ram killed Ravan, which is a kind of a sentence that reminds us about violence. Why can't we speak about, why can't we change this sentence into Ram loved Sita? I'm not talking about the carnal love here, the love for the pleasure, physical pleasure. That is not what I meant. The divine life, the eternal love, just like Ram loved Sita. And if that is the way, we could have students enjoying, remembering these classic statements. Ram loved Sita instead of Ram killed Ravan. And this Ram loved Sita could be changed into passive voice. You could easily remember that. Sita was loved by Ram. Sita was loved by Ram. So active voice sentence, example for active voice sentence can be Ram loved Sita, and example for passive voice sentence is Sita was loved by Ram. Let us go with some more examples. And we have thus active voice and passive voice. In the active voice, we speak about what the subject does. And in passive voice, the focus is changed to the object. The focus is on the object. And that is how we get Ram killed Ravan. If you want, you can say Ram loved Sita. Or in the passive voice, we say Ravan was killed by Ram. In the other way, you could say Sita was loved by Ram. Whatever you like, you may choose. Now look at the screen, you may see Gandhiji was put behind the bar. Remember, how could the news be on those days in the newspaper? It may not be the British arrested Gandhiji. It may not be. Instead, it could be Gandhiji was arrested. Gandhiji was arrested. That could be the statement that might have appeared in the newspapers those days, because we don't mind if he was arrested by the British or somebody else. What we want to know if our beloved Gandhiji was arrested or not. And that is how the statement could be, instead of the British arrested Gandhiji, it could be Gandhiji was arrested. Gandhiji was arrested. And while we speak about active voice and passive voice, or while we speak about writing passive voice sentences, we must know one thing. Only sentences with the transitive verb or verbs used transitively can be changed into passive voice. All and sundry sentences cannot be changed into passive voice. If a sentence holds a transitive verb or a verb that is used transitively, such sentences can be changed into passive voice. Means, if someone tells that they sat there, Ram slept well, the bird flew in the sky, such sentences cannot be changed into passive voice as they have an intransitive verb with them. Now, remember, only sentences with the transitive verbs or verbs used transitively can be changed into passive voice. What could be the application of this passive voice in our day-to-day life? You see, most of the times you might have noticed the newspaper headings, just like I talked about Gandhiji's arrest. The headlines of most of the time, what we see in the newspaper, most likely they may be a kind of informal passive voice. You can see plenty of such headlines on the screen. Now, how can we identify a passive sentence? How can we identify? How can we identify when we see a sentence if it is passive voice? Remember, a sentence in which a past participle or V3 verb form comes after a B family helping verb. You can see on the screen the 8 helping verbs is said to be in the passive voice. So if we find a V3 verb form, a past participle after be or is, and, are, was, were, be, and being, then that sentence could be said to be in passive voice. Otherwise, never. An example is given. You can see on the screen. English is spoken all over the world. There, the verb spoken is V3 verb form, speak, spoke, spoken. And then it comes soon after a B family verb, which is. Therefore, we could say that this statement is found in the passive voice. Now it is workout time. Let us identify the following sentences as active or passive voice sentence. A set of sentences are given to you just to try to find out if it is given in active voice or passive voice. You may identify the sentence and take a piece of paper and write whether it is AV or PV. AV for active voice and PV for passive voice. If you get the right answer, you have almost understood how to identify a passive voice sentence. Look at the following sentences that come one after another. There are 5 such sentences. Look at the screen. Can you identify which among them are passive voice? How to identify them? You need to identify first the verb. Once you identify the verb, you have to see whether it comes after a B family verb. A B family verb, which is be, is, are, was, were, being, being. And if they come after a B family helping verb, a V3 verb form that comes after a B family verb helping verb, then definitely it is a passive voice sentence. Otherwise, no. Very simple. Let's see. They were late by an hour. What could be the verb? The verb is were. Were is the verb. And then it appeared after a V3 verb form? No, no V3 verb form is used here. Where is not at all in V3 verb form. Therefore, we know it is not passive voice, because in a passive voice sentence we always find a V3 verb form. Since no V3 verb form is used, it is not at all passive voice, it is an active voice sentence. The second sentence, it was watched by the whole world. What could be the verb? The verb is was watched. Now, watched, that is the main verb. It is a V3 verb form, and it comes after a B family helping verb, which is was. So, B family verb is used, and then the main verb is found in the V3 verb form. Therefore, it is passive voice, no doubt at all. Pakistan had been defeated many times. Now, the verb is had been defeated. The verb phrase is had been defeated. And the main verb is defeated. It comes after a B family helping verb, been. Therefore, it is a passive voice sentence. Again, look, she has been reading for an hour. Of course, the verb is has been reading. So definitely there is a B family member helping verb is there, been. But after the been, do we have the V3 verb form? No, it is the V4 ing verb form. That doesn't tell us anything about passive voice. Therefore, no V3 verb form is used after been or after what we call a B family helping verb. Therefore, it is not passive voice, it is active voice. Now, the test is conducted weekly. The verb is conducted, and the conducted that comes after the B family helping verb. Therefore, it is B3 verb form. And since a B family verb is used and then V3 is used, it is passive voice sentence. And this is how we could identify a sentence if it is in passive voice. Now, it is time for us to transform sentences from active voice into passive voice. It is time for us to learn how to change a sentence from active voice into passive voice. This is what we need to expect in the question papers many of the time. Change of voice, change sentence from active voice into passive voice. Here, today in this lesson, I give you lessons on assertive sentences. So, this module is only on assertive sentences. The rest of the thing about interrogative sentence and imperative sentences, I will teach you later. This module is meant for transformation of sentences from active voice into passive voice only the assertive sentences, for which I give you three compulsory rules. There are two types of rules when we deal with the change of active voice into passive voice. The first one among them is the compulsory rule. There are three compulsory rules. The first one, and I give you in a capsule way. I give you three words, you may remember. And then after when I say interchange, it means interchange subject and object. So the first rule is interchange, which means you may by heart interchange, but it means interchange subject and object. The second rule tells by, which means you will have to remember only by, but you will have to understand right by before the object in the passive voice. And the third rule is V3, by which what you need to understand is always use V3 verb form in the passive voice. So three compulsory rules, in a nutshell you can remember: interchange by V3. Interchange by V3. Interchange means interchange subject and object. By means right by before the object in the passive voice. V3 means always use V3 verb form in passive voice. Let's go with some examples. Here I give you three examples, and I deal only with the compulsory rules, and later I will teach you about the optional rules, and then we will complete the three sentences, changing from active voice into passive voice. So here I don't give you the three sentences, I give answer, partial answer in the first part, dealing with the compulsory rule, and then we will talk about the optional rule. Then we will completely, I will give you the answer to each of the three questions. The first statement, Ram loved Sita. I said, I love this sentence. Ram loved Sita. So what is the first rule? Remember the first rule? Interchange. Interchange subject and object, which means the subject becomes the object and the object becomes subject. The subject becomes object and object becomes subject. Why the object becomes subject? I already told you. In a passive voice sentence, the object is the most important thing, and therefore we bring the object as a subject of the passive voice sentence. Clear? Now, what could be the second rule? The second rule of if we see Ram loved Sita, we have interchanged subject and object. Now, the second rule is used by, right? By. Therefore, what we need to do? Bring by before the object. So we got Sita by Ram. By Ram, it could be the last part of the sentence. Now move forward. What could be the third step or the third rule? They are compulsory. We need to follow all the three rules. And the third rule is nothing but V3, which means always use V3 verb form. V3 verb form. What is the V3 verb form of loved? And that we need to think. The V1 is love, and V2 is loved, and V3 also is loved. Thus, after completing the three rules, after fulfilling the three requirements, we get Sita and interchange subject and object right by before we write the V3 verb form. Completed. It is only half part of the transformation. Okay, let us take another sentence. Another sentence. We learn English. We have not completed the answer. Okay, I will give you. We learn English. What could be the three rules? Interchange, by, and then V3. And these are the three rules. Now let us take the sentence. We learn English. Interchange subject and object. That could be the first rule. So we change we. Now becomes we become us, because, and this is the one thing you have to important. When we say we learn English, we is the subject, and the subject tends to be an object. And there are some modification when we write a subject into object. For example, I become me, we become us, you become you. Then he become him, she become her, they become them. and those types of changes should be done. So we become us, and English, same English. So speech interchange now the subject and subject and then object. Now what could be the second rule? Write by. So we write by before the object, done. And now what could be the third rule? Always use V3 verb form. What is the verb here? Learn. What is the V3 of learn? Learn. Learn is V1 and we learned is V2 and learned is V3. And now we, after completing the three requirements of the first three rules, we get the answer English by learned. It is, remember, it is incompleted. We have only took the first step, completing the three compulsory rules. Now they are coming with the third sentence. They were writing a letter. Good, they were writing a letter. You must remember what could be the first rule? Interchange subject and object. I told they become them. And a letter, remember the first letter of a sentence should be capital letter. That changes, such modification is needed. And then comes the second rule, write by before the object. And thus we could write by. Now third rule is always use V3 verb form. The verb here is writing. The main verb is writing. What could be the V1? Write. V2 wrote and V3 written. Thus, when we fulfill the three rules, we get this like this. A letter and them is changed and then by we wrote and written. Now, half of the work is done. This much will not give us, will not fetch us complete mark. Let us proceed. And now I come here. I give you five optional rules. After the three compulsory rules, I give you 5 optional rules. Why do I say 5 optional rules? There are the 3 rules you will have to follow without change. You have to follow maximum as far as possible. There are certain occasions where it may not mind, but they are compulsory in a sense as and where it is needed. Now when I speak about optional rules, there are 5 optional rules, but you need to follow any one, which means you need to select any one. When you select among these 5 rules, when you select one, the 4 you can throw out. You can be unmindful to the rest of the 4. What are the 4 rules? Let us begin. The first one is, if you find has, have, had in the active voice question sentence, in the answer sentence, in the passive voice sentence, you may add, along with the has, have, had, you may add been. Then, remember that, has, have, had, been. If you find ing form in the verb plus ing form in the active voice sentence, in the passive voice sentence, you have to write being. Again, sometimes you may have little confusion. Should we write being or being? It's simply this much. If you find ing in the active voice sentence, write being where you may find an ing. In the being, the last part is ing form. And if there is no ing in the passive voice. If there is ing, write being, add being, or write extra the word being in the passive voice. Now if you find the simple past tense form or V2 verb form in the active voice sentence, you have to add, you have to write extra, either what or where according to the number of the subject. If singular, write what. If it is plural, write where. And then modal verbs like will, would, can, could, shall, should, may, might. These verbs are called modal verbs. And if you find any modal verbs, along with the modal verbs, you may add be. Remember, in maximum cases, you use the same modal verb. If it is written may, it must be may be in passive rules. Don't write might be. If it is can, then change into can be. Don't write could be. Similarly, if you find might in the active voice sentence, you write it might be, don't change into maybe. Same way, if you find should, you may write should be, don't write shall be. And now comes the fifth rule. If you find V1 verb form, you may add in the passive voice sentence either is or am or are according to the number, means singular or plural of the subject. Remember these 5 rules, 5 optional rules. If you find it suitable, if you find any one among them is suitable, you can forget about the rest of the 4 in the given question. So, has, have, had, been, ing, being, V2, was, were. Modal verb plus be, add be, V1, and then add is, am, are. Now let's go back to the 3 examples which I gave you in the earlier. I told those sentences were not completed. Let's go with that. You might have, now you may be remembering that those 3 sentences which I gave you incompleted. So, Ram loved Sita. We wrote, this much we interchanged, wrote by and verb. And now, the verb form, loved, in the question is V2 verb form. And what is the rule? If we find V2 in the active voice, we may have to write either was or were. Now, along with the Sita, since it is a singular subject, we may use was, not were. And thus we get the answer, Sita was loved by Ram. Now remember the second sentence. We learn English, and we interchange the subject and object, write by, and then use the V3 verb form. Now come, we learn. V1 verb form is used there in the question. So if you find V1 verb form, what could be the rule, the optional rule? No need to write been, no need to write being. Instead, you may write either is or am or are. Add along with English. With English, what could be the best option? English is or English am or English are. Since English is singular, we may write English is learned by us. Here comes the third one. We know they are writing a letter, or they were writing, whatever may be. So, remember, ing form is used. We have to write it being. Let us see, a letter was being written by them. It was written, they were writing a letter. They were writing. But a letter, with the a letter we cannot write where. It must be, the verb must be, helping verb must be singular. And therefore we write was instead of were. And this is how we could write, we could change an active voice sentence into passive voice sentence. Let us remember once again. Ram loves Sita. This time it is loves. So look at the word Sita. Interchange subject and object. Write by and then V3 verb form loved. And again, we learned English. We learned English. Interchange subject and object. Write by and then V3 verb form. He is writing answers. Interchange subject and object. Write by and then V3 verb form of write, written. She had done the homework. Interchange subject and object. Write by and then use the V3 verb form done. The last one. Interchange subject and object. I become me. And then by second rule, third rule carried. So we have now completed the 3 compulsory rules. Now let us follow the optional rules. Loves is V1 verb form. Therefore we write either we need to write is, am, are. Along with Sita, we cannot write am, we cannot write are because Sita is singular. Now we learned English, V2 verb form. We need to write add either was or were. Along with English, we cannot write were because were is used only along with the plural subject. Therefore the answer is English was learned by us. Now he is writing answers. The third, and now we find he is writing. Whenever you see is, you must use in the passive voice one among is, am, are. So the answer is are being, because whenever we find ing verb form, we are supposed to write being. Thus, the answers are being written by them. In the active voice, it is he is writing, because the subject is singular. And now, when the object turns to be subject and answers, we cannot write answers is being, because answers is plural. And that's why I said we need to use either is or am or are according to the subject. She had done the homework, and now we found the word had. So if we find had, along with had, we must use them. Okay, before that I may say, you may have a doubt about why should we write ing. Okay, now listen, in the active voice sentence, it is written he is writing, and therefore the ing form is written here again in the being, and that is why we say we have to give the answer. Answers are being written by them. Now, homework, we may see had is written, along with had you have to write been. So the answer comes had been, nothing else. Don't write homework is been, am been, are been, was been, where been. I remind you once again, been, if you write before be, in before been, it is mandatory for you to write any of the three words, has or have or had. Without has or have or had, you should never use the word been. It is not necessary that every time you write has or had, you need to write been. That's also not correct. Now let us see, we have completed the three compulsory rules. Now we find in this sentence, in the active voice sentence, we find the modal verb can. We must write again can, but add be. And thus we get can be. This box can be carried by me. And thus, we must remember the three compulsory rules and the 5 optional rules. We need to follow the 3 compulsory rules without mistake, and one among the 5 optional rules. And once you select the one, the rest 4 can be cancelled. Now let us go further. Change into passive voice. You were teaching English, and then you have taught English. How could we write? So again, interchange subject and object, write by, and then V3 verb form of teach is taught, and then comes the next sentence. You have taught English, interchange subject and object, write by, and then English, teach, V3 verb form is. Now look at the sentence, you may find both sentences when we follow the compulsory rules, whatever may be the tense of the sentence, the compulsory, after completing the formalities of the first 3 rules, it looks similar. In the first sentence we were writing past continuous tense, and the second you could see the present perfect tense, but passive voice, after completing the modalities or formalities of first rule, we found they are similar. And then now comes the change, where you have to add being, because teaching ing form is used. Therefore, when you see where, you must know that either was or where must be used. Along with English, you cannot use where. So the answer is English was being taught by you. Now you found how. Along with how, you must use either has or have, because it depends upon the number of the subject. Now English, subject is singular, therefore have been. But when you see had, you don't have to bother about it. You cannot change had into has or have. Only the change comes only when you see is, ama, was, where, or has and have. Other places, the helping verbs remain same without change. Now this is how we could change active voice sentence into passive voice sentence. While the penguins attacked my sister, the action is attacked, and then while the penguin is subject and my sister is object. Now that while the penguins are subject and my sister is the object. Now that object turns to be the subject here, and my sister was attacked, that turns to be the action, by wild penguins. And that is how we change. Remember one thing, if the object is unknown or unnecessary, the by part can be bypassed. I taught you in the 3 compulsory rules, and I told in the beginning also, sometimes it is not necessary. If the object of the active voice sentence is either unknown or unnecessary, then we need not use the second part, which means by part, and by afterwards the object, that can be avoided, bypassed. That's why I say by part can be bypassed. And now look at some sentences. I give you various tense forms in the active voice as well as the passive voice examples. Same, almost the verb is same, only tense is different. In the present simple I make a cake, and a cake is made. In the past present continuous tense I am making a cake is being made. In the past simple we say I made a cake, and a cake was made in the passive voice. And past continuous we say I was making a cake was being made. And now present perfect we may say I have made a cake has been made. And now in the past perfect I may say I had made a cake had been made. In the future simple I say I will make a cake, but in the passive voice it could be a cake will be made. And again a future be going to. So you may say I am going to make a cake. In the active voice a cake is going to be made. Don't change into being gone. That will be a wrong usage. If you find ing form and if you change into being, it will be a wrong statement. Here the main verb is actually the infinitive, to infinitive verb form to be. And so to make is the verb form. Therefore you make it made and to be made. And that could be the best way to write. And then a model, I must make a cake must be made. A future perfect tense also we could write I shall have made, and a cake shall have been made. That could be also done. Now let us see into it is now brainstorming time. Take a piece of paper, get ready with the answer for the questions that is coming in front of you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. Please take a while to write the answer. You need to change the sentences into passive voice. Let us see the first one. Interchange subject and object, write by, write the V3 verb form. Interchange subject and object, write by, use V3 verb form. Interchange subject and object, write by, use V3 verb form. Interchange subject and object, write by, use V3 verb form. Interchange subject and object, write by, use V3 verb form. And half of the work is done. Now let us follow the optional rule. In one we need to select. We cook food. Cook is V1 verb form. Therefore we write is. We cooked V2 verb form. Therefore we write with the food we may write was. We are cooking food. ING form is used. Are is again there. Therefore, is are we have to write, but being also must be written. And with food we can write. With food we may write is being. And now we had cooked, no doubt had been. And here again, once again, I remind you about the ING form. And now comes had been. Food had been cooked. And again, we can, it is helping verb. So with can, don't change into could. We are not supposed to change can into could. So can be, that will be the right answer. And thus, passive voice sentence can be easily made without mistake. Now here comes some questions. Look at these sentences. You may get the answer now. We cook food. Food is cooked by us. We cooked food. Food was cooked by us. We are cooking food. Food is being cooked by us. We had cooked food and food had been cooked by us. We can cook food. Food can be cooked by us. And this is how we make active voice sentences into passive voice sentences.